Welcome to Mother, the show where we can explore our inner mothers to actualize our greatest selves. Through interviews with incredible guests, live coaching sessions, and my own experiences, we're going to dive deep into embracing feminine values and reparenting ourselves. So be prepared to show up, hold space, and be mothered in a way you never have before, but have always needed. It's time to rewrite the mother code. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Rewrite the Mother Code with me, your host, Dr. Gertrude Lyons. And I am so thrilled to have Elizabeth Tuazon as my guest today. And obviously, you're going to hear all about her and all her particulars, but I wanted to share a little bit about how this came about, that we are going to do a series with her. So Elizabeth is giving birth in August, and I have had the privilege and honor to be her coach way back. This is kind of one of my favorite coaching scenarios, right? We were coaching and life coaching just about her, and a little ways into our coaching, she said that she and her partner were starting to talk about possibly having a child. I've been able to be with her through her whole journey of that conversation and what that means, and how do I have that, as consciously as possible, and really went right into, the Rewrite the Mother Code model of exploring, discerning, asking some of the hard questions. And she has just been in it, fully in that regard all the way through. So there have been lots of choices along the way, and lots of depth and turning herself inside out through this journey and process. And in a recent coaching session, we decided to do breath work. And I love when I do in person where we can do dynamic breath work. And I added sound healing to it because I have a beautiful set of singing bowls, and just adding that resonance and the healing sound and power to our work for some of our sessions was really beautiful and really moving for both of us. So we are going to have Elizabeth on for a series. So once a month, we're going to check in with her. This one will be kind of getting us kicked off, hearing some of what she's been up to and some of the experiences she's been having. And then we'll get to keep building on it and keep hearing from her and seeing what she's up against. So I hope you're as excited about, this potential and possibility as I am. And then just to note that it's perfect timing for me, because I like mentioning, and you'll probably be hearing it even more and more, how I'm really in the experience of conceiving and creating my book, Rewrite the Mother Code. So we're co-journeying on it in this aspect. And I am very glad to have this framework to be going through this process for myself as well. So without further ado, let's hop into this episode. Well, I am so excited to be sitting here and kicking off this series with Elizabeth Tuazon. Elizabeth, thank you so much for agreeing to this and being part of what I'm sharing on Rewrite the Mother Code, but from your perspective and your journey. I know it's going to be so inspiring. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Gertrude. It's an honor to be here.
Yay. So Elizabeth and I know each other on several layers and levels. We have worked together, where I've got to see her after I share some of her credentials and stuff. I've seen her in action in many of these aspects, and that's been wonderful. I've also coached and am currently coaching you in your growth and development process. That's part of kind of a bigger umbrella where you're really deep diving into yourself and your work. And I'm sure that'll come up and we could talk about it. And then just knowing you as a person and different ways I've gotten to know you. You're just a beautiful, amazing, wonderful woman and individual. So I'm going to give some particulars, but I think those are some of the more important particulars from my opinion. Okay. But let's hear a little bit just about Elizabeth in your life, in your world. So Elizabeth is a professional performing artist, teacher, and director in music and dance. with a degree and decades of experience in that field. She's also a professional life coach. She is PCC certified with the International Coaching Federation and has been on her deep journey, which I think is one of the most important credentials in the coaching realm, is if you're doing your own work, which I know you are. And I know that very much. She also directs designs and manages curriculum. She has this just beautiful gift around wrapping her heart and mind around curriculum, and particularly in the social emotional intelligence and human emergence arena. So big kudos there. And I think by the time this first one airs, actually, your pole dance competition is going to be over. So we'll get to celebrate with you. But I'm
Woo.
still going to name it that on Saturday, May 27th, because we're recording this before that date live in Chicago. So very special because you are, now I can speak about you for this, and this might launch us into it, are doing, this choreographed dance, pole dance with your beautiful belly with your unborn child. So I know that's going to be super special, but we'll be able to, hopefully that'll be recorded. So when people
Yeah.
hear this, they can have access because I think people are going to want to see that. I'm sure. Those are some of the particulars just to get a sense of Elizabeth in her life, but we're going to be focusing on, it's going to connect to those aspects, but just how you are rewriting the mother code in your life in pre-pregnancy or conception and now pregnancy. And then, we're going to be with you through the journey of birth. So I'm super excited about that because get to check in with you on a monthly basis through it all is such a gift. But I just want to turn it over to you, Elizabeth, and have you share what's on your heart and mind in this realm. And we'll be touching a lot of spaces that you've already been in and continue to be in. Over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Gertrude. Gosh, I often find that there's not really a lot of words. I could say a lot of words to try to describe what it is that I'm feeling and sensing and experiencing. And sometimes it's just like, I don't know what words to say. So I want to say that
Well,
first.
I just want to underline that because it's very feminine not to have words, right? Words are on our left side of our brain and they try and summarize and grasp, but I think you're pointing to how much of this experience is in the more ungraspable space. And I always love referring to Jill Bolte Taylor, but, in our character 3 and 4, it's so much about not having words for it. So that there won't be, but we'll do the best we can,
Yeah,
putting it
we'll
into
put
language. Yeah.
some words will come out. And one of the great ironies of that is actually how many words exist in the canon of all human thought and speech. Like I could read a medical textbook about pregnancy and motherhood. I could read and am reading like a Montessori for babies book on like how are we going to raise this little being. And I could read 1,000 blogs and I could read a million posts. And it's like some of them much more special and precious moments don't come from like consuming the words outside or even
Mhm.
like trying to produce words, but it's just like experiencing. Like there's nothing quite like being kicked in the ribs and
Mhm.
like from the inside. There's nothing quite like it. And like I can say that phrase, but to like really really like be in that moment and like marvel at the wonder
Mhm.
of like there's a little being there's a little being who's exploring.
How
uh
miraculous, how
that's
incredible.
amazing. Oh my gosh. I do refer to little being as a she, but but she was like really exploring last
Mhm.
night, and it's so funny. Even to my partner, Ryan and I have been married for 6 years now. This will be our first child. There's so many things that I like. I want to share with him, and there's so many things that I do share with him as best I can, but I can't share that part. And I like I I used to get like mad. Like it's like I'm gonna just like press my belly against your body and I'm like, see, can you are you feeling anything? And I'm like, I
Yeah.
know that he is, but it's not the same. It's not the same. And he can't feel everything that I'm feeling either. And it's not that he needs to. And but I do want to invite him on on the journey of experiencing like, gosh, this is really something. This is really something.
Mhm.
There's nothing like being in a meeting or something and having like a little rumble of like, oh gosh, what's that? Something's happening for our little being, and it's precious. It's precious to experience. And then there's the changes in my body. Like you mentioned, I've been a pole dancer for 10 years, 12 years actually, I think. And I've been doing that a long time. And I was very active and fit and healthy before that as well. And never have I ever, before now, experienced so many body changes that I didn't do on purpose.
Wow.
Like, if I want to get stronger in a certain way, I can do an exercise program. If I want to change the shape of my body, I can change what and how I eat. If I want to change like my physical experience of my lived day, I can change my sleep hygiene. Like I can do those things and I still can, and I still,
Mhm.
still can do those things, but like I'm not doing these ones on purpose, or like I mean my body is, but I'm not consciously doing
Right.
them. My body,
Right.
the wisdom of my body is just like well, it's now time for some different shapes. It's now
Yeah.
time for some different sensations than you've ever felt. And I'm like, okay, I am trusting that that is right and good, and I get to have the experience of, so far I have the great blessing of like every medical appointment that I've been to, like every single one without exception so far, and like I don't know if I need to knock on wood or anything, but every single one they've said like, great, you look great, everything's looking good, you're healthy, progressing appropriately, well done, see you in a while. And like maybe there's some numbers and terms and like vocabulary. There's lots of that. There's
Yep.
plenty to learn.
Lots of
If I
lingo.
if I were to care to learn, and I have, it's
Mhm.
been fascinating. Because I've always had a hunger for learning, but
Yeah.
there's just, it's so odd that my body is the environment for the creation of this being,
Mhm.
and and I'm not consciously doing anything.
Wow.
I'm like
Yeah.
feeding
Keep going.
myself. I'm like
Right. No, you're,
sleeping, those
yeah, you're taking
parts.
care, but you would be doing
Yeah,
that anyway
I'd be
and
doing that
not having
anyway.
a baby grow in your
Right,
body.
right, right.
So it's not because of that that these things are happening. And I'm really struck by what you're saying, Elizabeth. And I love you underlining this point of I don't know if it's like kind of a facet of the miracle of it all, but also how you're embracing it. Because I think
Yeah,
they go hand in hand. And I think there are a lot of women who, well, there's two things, right? A lot of what you pick up and read just talks about all of the discomfort and all of the
yeah.
issues and all of the, I'm going to call it victimhood around pregnancy. It is harder to find the celebration of it and the positive, but it's better, you could find them. I think you've found some, but I think if you're not, haven't worked or done any work, and you could tell me if this is partly what's so for you. Well, one, you've been very in your body through dance, but then I
Yes.
think through your growth work, you've been
Mm.
connecting your emotions to being in your body, embodying your emotions through your body, like a whole next level of connection with your body, where
Mhm.
I think it's made it safer to welcome the newness, right? I was hesitating calling
Sure.
it discomfort, but it is. There's discomfort, if we
Mm-hmm.
term it that way. And I likened it to, when you travel to a different country and things aren't the way they are in your home or what you're used to, and you're like, oh, and you complain about it, but you traveled to that different
Mm.
country to have a different experience, right? Like to
Yeah.
explore, right? So I want to underline that this choice that you're making, because it is a choice, and I remember that at various points in my pregnancy to choose, how I stepped into this next phase. I know I shared this with you, but I don't know if I've shared it on air, just as an example of just how much choice we have. Because I'd have so many people say when I got to, into my third trimester, like, well, pretty soon you'll start waddling. I'm like, oh, all right. And there were other things, bad things that they said would happen. And suddenly I'm walking down the hall and I'm like, oh my God, I'm waddling. I'm like, you know what? I wonder if I have to waddle. Is that like part of it? Because that's what everybody's saying you do. But I'm like, I don't think I want to waddle. And so I stopped waddling. Like it just took a little extra conscious effort and it wasn't any more uncomfortable. It didn't make things, I think our body just, kind of defaulted to that. But that I do have some choice in how I'm experiencing it and how I want to live with it. And I know you've been having experiences like that as well. So I wanted to really underline several things about this point.
Yeah, that resonates a lot, Gertrude. I've said that since the beginning. Just like, I guess I don't mind the term discomfort
Mhm.
because it's outside of what's comfortable for me.
Yeah, the
Like
norm.
my
Right.
comfort zone, you know?
Yeah.
We know from coaching, like that's the game. And the game is like
Get
what is
uncomfortable.
possible about getting, when you get out of your comfort zone. So,
Yes.
and it's the same with dancing. It's why I've enjoyed that my dance experience so much too. And even like my other artistic experiences, it's like, what's the limit of this medium? What's the limit of my body right now? Can I stretch it? Can I lean into that? And like it gets uncomfortable and like that's okay. And I going toward the discomfort and embracing it is something that I think has come from like both my artistic practice, but also like just my mental construct that I've worked on from doing
Hmm.
my growth work.
Yeah.
It's like, it's okay. Sure, I like to be comfortable as much as the next person, but it's
Hmm.
okay to be uncomfortable. In fact, it's very growthful.
I love that. And
Or
because I think that as you're saying that, it evokes for me that the code is you're going to be uncomfortable and that's bad. And
right.
and how do I avoid it versus what's it teaching me? What am I learning? How am I experiencing this? When I stretch into it, like you're asking different questions about it than just accepting. I think, what we hear a lot is like, well, you just got to either like suck it up or be in this place of where the negativity of it versus the potential and what's possible, and that's what we want to rewrite.
Yeah. That takes me straight to this is
Mhm.
a little bit of like thinking into the future here, but
Yeah.
it's when I was talking about when Ryan and I were talking about like how do we envision this process going or being, like how do we
Mhm.
envision ourselves as we go? It's really been wonderful how thoughtful that we've been so far and like continue to be. We have many areas of growth too that we still are like, oh wow, we're gonna change some habits. It's gonna be worth it. So, but the thing that I wanted to bring in, speaking of discomfort, speaking of the mother code, is the old mother code is like avoiding discomfort.
Mhm.
There's a part of the narrative that I've heard from my mother, from my aunts, from my women friends, go for the epidural. That is the advice, is like take the drugs. You don't need to feel that discomfort of
Yeah.
the process of birth. And like there was a part of me that had never questioned that.
Mm.
That
Yeah, it was just that's what everyone
yeah,
says. That's
yeah.
yeah, okay. That makes
Like
sense in many
my
ways.
Yeah, and my mom is like part of the medical, like she's in the medical profession. She works in a hospital. She's always been very pro, like use the technology we've got. And I've pushed back a little bit on that, but just a little bit over the years. And not until I was researching, like, gosh, where are we going to give birth? How are we going to do that? Like, I was opening my mind to think about how do I want that to go?
Sure.
And having a conversation with you and with others who don't go for like avoid discomfort and pain at all costs, I found this local birth center that I was like, and I was really struck by their philosophy. And I was like, oh, wow. I'm not going to say it perfectly, but my impression of it is like women for generations have been giving birth without the intervention of Western medicine. And it's not like we have the tools available, yes, and women are more strong, capable, resilient than they have even been led to believe. And I just like felt my heart like leap out of
Mm.
my body for that. I was
Yeah, here, here.
like, whoa, I want that.
Yeah. I want to be empowered with that. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like there's, the model is like as little, as much intervention as is needed for safety and health as we see it, as we believe, but as little as necessary. As little as necessary. And like having the experience of, I've really been embracing natural childbirth, like as the direction that I want to go since I read that, basically. And like there's been other influences to other conversations, and like I watched Ricky Lake's documentary. I can't remember the name of it right now. But yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot that I've considered that is different
Mm-hmm.
than what I really grew up with. And also there's just like so many images in the media of like this is a wretched, horrible experience, and
Right.
and you might as well be drugged while you're
Going through
undergoing
this
this
horrible,
torture.
this
Yeah.
torturous. Oh, I know.
Yeah.
So many things to say about that, Elizabeth, but I love you sharing your journey and experience of it because, everyone kind of comes as well. Just, I guess what I love also is having as many places as possible for women to know that there are options.
Right.
And it really behooves us to dig into them and make thoughtful options. And even if the thought of what you're saying, because I certainly had a lot of reactions when I chose to do a natural childbirth and home birth. So believe me, plenty of reactions like, oh my God, like, why would you do that? I could never do
Absolutely.
that. But I don't think people stop and think, like, well, could I? And what is it? What is this experience to discern? And that's always what I'm really about is yes, I think there's a lot of positives and advantages, but mostly I want people knowing that and then making a choice, right? Because right now in our culture, it isn't even really a choice. It's so ingrained. I mean, it's probably really only about not even 75 years. I don't know, something like that of this paradigm of pain medication,
Hmm.
right? But unfortunately, what that did, and even if we want to alleviate some of the pain in some safe ways, it unfortunately then just kind of expands into that the whole experience is a medical event and an emergency
Right.
and it requires
Right.
lots of intervention. It just everything ripple effects from
Ah,
there,
I know,
right?
I know. And it starts from so small.
Right.
Like when, okay, get this. When I went into my early appointments with the midwives at the birth center, I like had a printout or like I had lab charts I could like download or read or whatever. The like pregnancy is in the medical model, pregnancy is a problem. Like it's literally on my paperwork, it was listed as a problem. I'm like, this is
Wow.
a problem. I felt
Wow.
so
I didn't know
reactive to that
that.
word. It's
Wow.
like, yeah, it's like the reason for the patient visit is a different thing than like a problem, like the or like a diagnosis practically. It's like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness, like what is, I mean, yeah, yes, I'm pregnant and I'm fine. I don't have a problem with this. So,
As a matter of fact, I chose it and really worked to
yeah,
make it happen. Unlike typical medical problems where,
right. And
we,
it's true that I wouldn't generally go. I get vaccines. I get like I have my well woman exam. That's
Mhm.
like preventative medicine, I guess. But still thinking it's even like preventative medicine or like a health, like a checkup or something. It's thought of, or like I think of it anyway, as like preventative medicine rather than like wellness
Mhm.
promoting. It's like we're preventing something horrible rather than actually just like making sure you're healthy and well, which
Yeah.
I think my mom would be very disappointed that I have such skepticism of the medical model, but I
Well, I was
do.
really just thinking about that, given, your mom in the medical model and you making some different choices. How is that going both for you to share that with her? And what are feelings that you've had about that or interactions, if you don't mind sharing? Hi, I'm so excited to share with you my 2024 Spring Equinox Self Mothering Retreat that's happening this March 2024. And I would love for you not only to consider it, but to attend. But in considering it, hey, just knowing that you would be leaving cold weather if that's the space that you're in and coming down to just magnificently beautiful, warm, nourishing place of Zihuatanejo, Mexico. Zihuatanejo meaning land of the goddess women, and coming to really take time for yourself. Okay. And that I am learning more and more isn't just a nice thing to do or something extravagant or something selfish. It's essential. And I really want you to take it seriously, to consider, just think about what would it take for me to go. It's a 5.5-day retreat, getting from where you are, getting there, landing there, and then being in a space that is all about you. It's all about nourishing you. It's all about tuning into you, using everything around us, the nature, the food, the beautiful people, the rituals, ceremonies. I bring it, we really bring it. And we go deeper and deeper as the days go on, and we release, we let go, we bring in what is nourishing, what is empowering, what is that space of just really divine feminine energy. And we do it in the community of women. It's not for everyone. I will be honest, if that idea of leaving and not making it work or it's just too hard, not for you. If the idea of, spending that amount of time inwardly focused and going to that level of self-awareness doesn't sound like something you're willing to do or put the time and energy into, then it's not for you. And it's good to know that, right? So this is for people who are serious about what it means to mother themselves, what it means to take time for ourselves and that gift and what that gift can bring to us. It was originally right after my fall retreat. It filled right up. But now some people, it turns out, are not able to come. So I do have a handful of openings. And if you're listening to this and you're willing to take that step, please reach out to me. We can do a discovery call or you can put a deposit down. I would love that. And you can do that by going to my website, www.drgertrudelyons.com. Go to events, and there you go. It'll all be there. There's a beautiful page there for you to explore. I look forward to hearing from you and then seeing you on my spring retreat.
We've just really started talking about it pretty recently, and like I get my sense, and I have more conversations to have with my mom about this, to be very clear. But
Mm-hmm.
my sense so far is that my mom's just like surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, she's not like dismissed any of the choices that I made. She's just like, oh, I didn't expect that. Like, oh, I wouldn't have imagined that. Like, yeah, I know. And like that's fine. Like she's literally been like working in hospitals for her whole career
Wow.
since I was born and even before then. But yeah, like that's sort of she said as much as, reporting for like one of her sisters was asking, she was like, what is Elizabeth doing with I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's not like it's a secret. That's the thing too, is like I've not been as like upfront and sharing
Mm-hmm.
actively with my family of origin because I also don't want to explain myself 20 times either. But like I really do want my mom to know me and
Yeah.
in a way that I want to be like, especially now as an adult. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's one thing when she's literally the woman who raised me. So like she has a lot of very deep insight to how I came to be who I had been. but I've been out of her house for a hot second now, and
Mhm.
I've grown a lot. And I am categorically a different person than when I was in my 20s, early 20s.
Mhm.
So,
So in
um,
so many ways, it's not surprising, but it doesn't mean there aren't those tugs, when we go to share something that we know is so out of her
yeah.
paradigm, and her world. And literally, I was thinking as you were saying it, it's kind of like saying like, well, I was raised in a certain religious platform or, and
Yeah.
that's how we have always operated. And I'm on my own and now I'm choosing something else. It's like, wait, what? You know, this is just what we
Hmm.
do. It's,
Yeah.
and especially so I know you've worked a lot at looking at, well, what the feelings that might come up when you share this. How do I stay with myself? What do I, that because we regress around our families, right? It's our initial wiring. And when we're making choices outside that wiring, we can easily default, and that's okay. It's just, can we catch ourselves and bring ourselves back to ourselves in this moment, right? And I think that happens so much through, well, in so many ways in our lives, as adults with
Sure.
our parents. But I think this one's particularly evocative for that. And we can be at various stages in such vulnerable places that, some of what our behaviors were when we were coping with stress as we were growing up are going to show up, and like, oh, okay, like, and we can sometimes even forget everything we've learned in our growth, like, but so having people around us and just know that that's okay too. We're going to do whatever we need to take care of ourselves. And then eventually we'll start back realigning to where
Mm.
we've grown into. Yeah, I was kind of told like early on, because I was very deep in my growth work and that, like, well, you're going to regress. And it was like a bad thing. So I'm like, I'm not going to regress. Like, well, that doesn't work. Right.
Mm.
So now I've kind of come to this middle ground. Like, I think it's good to be aware pretty much anytime we're around our families of origin, like changes and shifts that we make can get a little wobbly, and, we can revert. And whether we're around them or not, when we're in stressful situations or new and uncomfortable situations, those might be our default mechanisms. And, I
Oh,
always advocate
totally.
that we have people around us that can help us remember, and just, trusting that we'll get there. We'll get back to ourselves and what
Oh, yeah.
this new wiring is. So we may be really clear right now, sitting in this spot, like what
I
I've
know.
rewired, but I'm not sitting there, a week post birth with this new baby and things and all the stuff that's happening, just to know, like, yeah, that's going to be a whole new adventure. We can't totally be prepared for it, but everything that you're talking about, making each one of these decisions for yourself and then staying with it and trusting you helps you, when as the pressure builds, or as, I don't know,
Yeah, well,
the
as the
circumstances
process
increase. Yeah.
progresses, yeah, it's like it wasn't until I was pregnant and actually like really hearing and seeing things like a little differently.
Yeah.
Um, for that reason, I someone referenced the fourth trimester, and I was like,
Mm,
oh,
yeah.
right. That's an important part of both baby's development and mine, and
Yes.
like mine and my
Well,
partners
say
in
more
my
about
family
that, because you've
units.
been exploring options for that, and in some
Yeah,
recent conversations we've had, if you don't mind kind of
sure.
sharing what that exploration's been like.
I think I want to say first that there were times when I like was not even wanting to think about it.
Hmm.
Even like in early pregnancy in particular, like there's plenty of things that I can be attentive to. You could even say concerned about in like the present moment, let alone looking like almost a year into the future. But I think I did a decent job. Like what I was really trying to do was protect myself from creating extra anxiety that I didn't need at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm glad that I did that. I was like,
Sure.
oh God, I could read about nipple trauma right now. There's plenty to read about it. But that's not that. Let's take a step back from like you could doom scroll pregnancy pretty
Oh my
hard.
gosh. Yeah.
Pregnancy and newborn life and even parenting, I'm sure. So I'm sure there's plenty available that I could create anxiety about. But when we think about, when I say we, I mean Ryan and I,
Mm-hmm.
when we're thinking about fourth trimester, that's like, okay, this has come to me in stages too. Like it
Sure.
didn't really occur to me as a thing until one of my early inklings was like one of my peers who is a mother said, "Oh yeah, I had all these plans around my birth. I had all these plans around birth, but I didn't have plans around breastfeeding, and I wish I had,"
Mm.
is what she said. And I was like,
Mm.
okay. I was like, cool. And like one of the things that I'm doing now with Ryan is like we have picked our, like picked out and bought and are taking a course on breastfeeding because I'm like, you know
Yeah.
what? I don't know anything about breastfeeding, but I'd like to do that if I
Yeah.
can. So let me learn from someone who has helped people do this. Because like, do I, to an extent, I like it'd be nice to keep trusting like my body to just like do things, but like once the baby's out in the world and there's like I am choosing where
Mhm.
and how to hold and put and dress and like all these things to that my body's not just doing automatically. If that's a level of preparedness that helps set me up for success, I'm gonna go for it.
Sure.
That's one thing. Just like thinking into like, oh my goodness, I'm just thinking back. Sorry, this thought, this memory. My very first prenatal appointment with the birth center midwives. They asked this question, just like it was like a first meeting. Ryan
Right.
was there, and it was kind of like an interview. And the question was, "How are you going to feed your baby?" And I was like,
Wait, what?
I don't. We were like 10 weeks pregnant. I'm like, I don't know. We're gonna feed them baby food. Like, oh, I do want to breastfeed. Like that's yes, breast milk.
Oh, that's what we're talking about. Oh,
Is that
okay.
what you mean? But I mean, those kinds of questions I think are like they perpetuate through very much of a young child's development. Like
Yeah.
I've just done a little dabbling of looking at like, okay, what's some of the thinking lately around introducing salad foods after blah, 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 weaning, blah, blah,
Mm.
blah, blah, blah. There's 100,000 things. And like the more I can focus on like what is it that I want to choose? Like I would like to breastfeed. And I gosh, if people talk about childbirth with
Mm.
a lot of anxiety
Yeah.
glasses, breastfeeding is also way on the list of like,
Way,
oh man,
way there. Yep.
people are so free to tell me and like and it's a blessing and a curse. People are so free
Hmm.
to tell me like, "Oh, I had a horrible time breastfeeding." I'm like, "Oh, okay. I guess I won't be taking advice from you then."
Right.
And like it's one thing for people to share their experience, and I think that's a thing that I don't want to squash is like people sharing their experience. And I also want to create a sense like I can do this. I am capable of doing this thing that again women have been doing for generations
Yep.
before me. I'm going, yes, is it overkill for me to like take a whole course on it? I don't know, but gosh, I'm
No,
gonna just freaking
but
try.
isn't that crazy that we would even think like we learn about so much stupid crap, in our
Don't.
upbringings, right? And so much useless I'm going to say useless, like things that get us to
Yeah,
think are fine, right? They don't have to be applicable or whatever, but somehow, and this is one of those big more universal myths that I'd love to explode, which is that you're just
I'm
supposed to know how to do this,
just supposed to
oh,
know.
a
It's
good
built
mother
into my
knows how.
DNA.
It's just so natural and you know exactly what to do and how to do. Well, we're not living in those environments where we've been watching and around our
It's
mothers
true.
or our sisters or a lot of other women going through it to witness what it is. So we do have, of course we should be learning about it, right? Of course in our culture, like that's a window in. And then we have to make choices once we've, I
Right.
like still think it's good to get some different perspectives on it.
Sure.
But you're also bringing up like, but that's your choice to step in But first of all, I just have to underline the like, oh my God, am I crazy to like do a course before? It's heck no, right? Like, and you'll come into your situation and you'll be like, nothing I
Right.
learned, it seems to be applying here. And that might happen, but it doesn't matter. You're giving yourself some knowledge, some awareness. And
Hmm.
then, and I think, when we're making the choices or when people are coming at us with like, I really like to support women to have a few things to say if you really don't want their whole
Mm,
negative story. Like sometimes, with people, it can be useful to kind of learn, some pitfalls and that to like look for. But if I'm sensing that this is just a big dump and complaint and I don't know, really not going to serve me, that I can say, I'm going to stop you right there. And if you could give me a bottom line, like what was your issue? And then if I run into that issue, I know I can come back to you. But right now, I'm
mm,
just really wanting to hold a, positive outcome space for myself. So, something
yeah.
like that. I'm not saying it has to be exactly, it has to fit you and what it is, but so often we'll just, oh, I guess this is part of it, just to listen to women's complaining. And I want to make that distinction, and this very well as a coach and for your own personal work, but there's a difference when a woman's sharing her story and she's in it and parts of it were hard and painful and she's sharing that and
Hmm.
you're with her and you kind of sense that she's even going maybe healing from sharing it with you versus the like, well, let me tell you, it's horrible and
Yeah.
you're
Don't
gonna
bother breastfeeding. It's not going to
yeah, just
work.
don't even do it. They say that it doesn't help anyway, and just launching into that, those are two very different come
That's
froms.
true.
And I think us feeling safe to sort those out for ourselves and have some boundaries and practicing that now before we jump in, because there'll be plenty of unsolicited advice on how to raise your child.
So I hear. So I understand.
Yeah.
Oh
Well,
my
anything else
goodness.
you want to share that's kind of on your mind right now with what you're what's in your sphere, or if it's something from the past that you want to make sure, kind of get spoken about
Mm,
what you've been learning and what you've been either rewriting or exploring for yourself. And then I'll have one more
yeah.
question.
One thing that I think is really interesting that is about how we're talking today.
Mm,
I mentioned to you the other day, like that birth center that I talked about, like I got a call from them 2 days ago, literally 2 days ago, that I won't be able to give birth in the birth center like I was hoping
mm,
and planning, and I was really upset to get that phone call. And
understandable.
um, actually today, a little bit later today, I have like, the person who's at the head of the birth center, like they're gonna take me on me and Ryan on a tour of like the a room in the hospital that they partner with, like in case you want to use that as an option. And like I'm not totally closed to that.
Hmm.
I mean, I want to have the impression of like being in the space. What is that like?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But at the same time, like Ryan and I have been like, well, maybe we're going toward home birth, actually.
Mm.
And I was reading up on like, gosh, if we go home birth, which I hadn't been researching, I'm like, gosh,
Well, you were
it's a whole
set.
other.
You had a
I
situation
had
that you felt
I
really
had
good
my
about.
plan. Turns out even that, that plan had to be written in pencil and like time to draft a new plan.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too, is like I really am intending to have a really, and I do mean the word wonderful in its original intent, a wonderful experience,
Hmm.
and one that I choose as much as is possible, and that I am positively influencing as much as is possible. And when I say wonder, I really do mean like it's also mysterious.
Yeah.
Like what? What you doing in there? Are you ready? Not yet. I know.
No.
You gotta cook.
Okay.
You gotta cook longer.
Hmm.
So, Ryan has been saying this since the beginning, that he's actually been way more sure and certain about this than I have.
Hmm.
But he's like, I trust you and the baby to do what needs to be done, have a great time, have an intelligent experience and like you're both smart and strong and healthy and it's all going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything that needs to happen is going to
Well, it's
happen. And
super empowering of him for sure. And
yeah.
holding that space and pull as maybe wonder or, gets a little
Mhm.
scared and all that. Like, nope,
Yeah. It's been really
it's
great to have him as a
beautiful.
partner.
Hmm. Yeah. Here. We get to meet monthly now for a bit. So I won't ask you this
Yay.
every time, but since I do ask every guest, I'll ask it this first time that we're gathering. And that is, what does rewrite the mother code mean to you?
Rewriting the mother code, it speaks to me even more deeply than you know this very, very well. It's like reimagining, redefining, reclaiming what it means to be a woman, what it means to be like a feminine presence and being embodied in this world now.
Mm-hmm.
And it does mean both looking with love and also with sometimes critical love at what
Yeah.
has been or what we've been handed or what such and so says, and really looking toward what is it that I would like to create here? What is it that
Mm-hmm.
I am really hungry to create or express or be or become?
Mm-hmm.
I rewrote some lyrics to a song the other week, and it's
Mm-hmm.
the first line is I've always thought that women were the source of all creation. And
Do you want to sing it?
um, oh gosh, I've always thought that women were the source of all creation.
Oh my gosh. I have goosebumps everywhere and I'm tearing up. Oh, it's
Yeah,
so beautiful, Elizabeth.
thank
That's,
you.
I hear that as a mantra for you, and maybe that's how you've been using it, but I felt moved but also soothed. I was like, oh, I don't know if you're ready
Hmm.
more to that, but maybe we could hear the whole thing at some point.
Yeah, we could it is mostly a very comical video, but that line is probably the most serious part of the whole thing for me.
Hmm. Well, I think all of it is good, and I love you and your creative mode, and
Yeah.
um, also realize I hadn't heard you sing in a while, and I'm like, oh, so beautiful, so good, so
Thanks,
good.
Gertrude.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, this space, and being willing to. I mean, I feel it's always a privilege, to sit with you and, with my coachees and be on their journey. But now, that others get to hear, I'm thrilled. I'm just thrilled and grateful. So thank you so much. And we'll see what's happening in your life about a month from now.
All right, sounds perfect. Thanks, Gertrude.
Sure. Wow. Oh my gosh. I am still vibrating from that session, and particularly there at the end where she sang just a couple phrases from a song that she was rewriting words to and lyrics she was rewriting words to. And I was covered in goosebumps and tears came to my eyes because there was and that was when I was asking her what rewrite the mother code means to her. So beautiful. And I want to underline a couple things. And we were really trying to hone in on some aspects, but want to get that general sense that there's no choice or decision in our lives that isn't worth, some reckoning with. And oftentimes it's ones that we don't even know we should be reckoning with. And I think Elizabeth brought that up, given, her mom's a nurse. She's always been around, the Western medicine model. And, without other people in her atmosphere that would talk about other options. And then when we were in conversation, me sharing other options, we don't know that they're there. So it really takes some awareness and consciousness to engage and have intention and trust any little inkling or nuggle that we have, or, somebody sharing alternative ways that aren't the norm, to not just dismiss them like, well, I already know what I'm doing, but to stop at some moments and reflect and look at like, oh, you mean there is another way? Or I think And sometimes it's not somebody sharing. You just have an idea like, this seems weird, but like maybe there's another way to do some of this stuff. And some aspects, whatever aspect of it is. This one was about her deciding how and where she's going to give birth. But there's so many, like, that's a big one. And then there's like lots of little ones along the way. And, I consider those kind of practice ground for the big ones and when we need to make the big ones around where we want to birth. And then within the birth, how, and when it's happening, how do I keep true to that decision I made and keep myself safe? And, we want to really build those muscles and really build the rewiring and have new wiring laid down as strongly as possible. And then in the throes of it, when we revert to our old wiring, I think that was important to underline too. That's okay, right? This isn't what I never want someone to feel like is, oh my gosh, well, this happened to her, right? She had her ideal birth as far as she knew, like set up with this birth center where it's the next best thing to a home birth if you're inclined to that. But, you're in a setting that has things available right there to have practiced that muscle, like, oh, how am I going to deal with this upset so that when it doesn't go exactly as planned or what your ideal is, to allow yourself to have feelings about that, not just like, oh, well, but also it isn't about having it perfect or, that there's a right way to do it and that we can sit and be with whatever the outcome is. And no matter what, you will have an experience, and that experience is going to be what it's meant to be. Not saying it's destiny, so to speak, but I will then have that to reckon with, and it may go exactly as planned and better, and everything in between, right? Didn't go anything as planned, but wow, what did go down, I have had an experience, and that's what we want, is to really fully have the experience. So you're getting a taste of, the journey I take people on, but women in this particular instance around birth, but this exploration and really critically thinking for ourselves, having our emotions, making decisions, that really ring true based on, data and information that's available to us. So do that in any and all ways possible. And if you'd like to do it with me, obviously, I would love that. And I love it. It's always such an honor, and I get to keep doing my work right along with you. So blessings. If you haven't signed up for my newsletter yet, for goodness sake, please do, because lots of good things coming up, and I love being able to share with more and more. So if you already have, share it with someone else. All right. Thanks, and blessings on your day. Thank you so much for choosing yourself and taking the time to listen to this podcast. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe to subscribe to Mother. It helps other people who need this message, aka all women, well, actually everybody, men included, find it. I'm honored to have you on this journey in mothering yourself. Remember, change is uncomfortable, but it's beautiful, and it starts with us. And if you can't wait until next week's episode, follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Dr. Gertrude Lyons or at my website, drgertrudelyons.com. I'll see you next time.